In the large hall, where the columns are located, there were two. One of them stood on the rise, and the crystal glowed between them. The older man in the classic attire turns to a stunned guy with blue eyes. He says he is an oracle and predicted his talents and this awakening. He then calls him in the name, Kaito Felbach. The sunny day envelops the city that is full of life. People are busy with their affairs, and the streets are caught back and forth. The street on the pavement rolls a carriage harnessed by a couple of horses. Inside, the young man sits elegantly. He sighs with the tender and raises his hands up. Kaito clenched his fist. One of the passengers on the opposite side of the wagon looked at him, noticed his nervous excitement, and laughed. The young man, throwing his foot on his leg, turns to him, calling his brother, and advises to relax. So they solemnly arrive in their territory of Felbach. A slightly embarrassed smile appears on Kaito's face when he calls the name of his brother, Cleo. In response, the guy reaches out his hand and focuses on his energy, glad that his brother finally mastered this skill. He exclaims that this skill is a gift of the gods, and at the same moment a sign appears on his palm, a soft rhombus with two waves inside. Cleo vigorously shakes the mark from the hand, and enthusiastically states that they will inevitably use these abilities to develop their lands, regardless of what force her brother has. Kaito also activates his ability, and looking at his hand, confesses that he once turned to the sake of the forces that he has finally found their use. In the end, they were in front of their father. Upon learning that Kaito gained the skill of awakening, the man called him a worthlessness. Suddenly, a soft, shiny diamond was shown in Kaito in his palm where you could see the same diamond patterns inside. The guy fades with his father's unexpected reaction. He does not understand what is happening. The father looks at him with disgust. Kaito tries to say something on his justification, but Cleo, with a sarcastic and gloomy smile, notes that this is exactly what he expected to develop events. The father looks at the children strictly, and says that the emperor himself has entrusted their family with the land of Felbach, which is why this territory is inherited from generation to generation. Angrily hitting his fist on the table, he emphasizes these words. He tells that his father, Alfonsia Felbach, has the ability of wind. This allows you to change the climate and make it more favorable to the crop. The younger brother has the ability of a source of wealth, which allows even the dried land to become fertile again. Both of these skills are really best suited for the lord that cares about his land. In the outbreak of fury, his father exclaims that he, the eldest son and pride of the family, also received a worthless skill. Kaito, hearing this, looks at his father, realizing the whole tragedy of this situation. The father does not retreat and insists on his own. They say, everything Kaito knows is to awaken people who sleep. He is convinced that such a gift is quite useless, and his son is not rich with him, so it is a complete failure. The guy looks sad at his angry father, feeling deep. The father continues his speech, noting that he cannot entrust the land to such a worthless son, and therefore chooses the heir of his younger brother Cleo. He slightly smiles noticeably, watching this scene. His father reports that Kaito is expelled from his family from now on, and at that moment the guy remains himself with his own suitcase. In an instant, he lost everything he had. The carriage carries him far from his home, and then leaves himself in the middle of the road. Wearing a simple robe, with several things and a sword behind the bosom, the guy can still not fully understand what is happening to him. Standing on dry land, the hero sadly recalls how, because of his new skill, he was expelled from his home. Having swirled from the strong wind, the guy stands at the edge of the break and realizes with horror, where he was expelled was the territory where criminals were being filled. He looks at the abandoned terrain called Algard. There is no greens around. Only sharp stone rocks can be seen on the horizon, and a strong dry wind spreads his clothes and shakes his hair. Looking into the distance, the hero regrets that he was sent here, not somewhere in a lively and better place. The guy sighs, tired, feeling frustrated. Kaito holds a letter in his hands, which he says that he is intended for the new Lord Algor to restore this region. He looks around again and understands that this desert is now his new possession. A confident smile appears on his face. Gathering with his forces, he understands that he has no other choice than to give this land a new life, because now it belongs to him. Strongly stretching to the clasp, he begins to remove his cloak. With a light movement, he removes his cloak and returns, looking at the dried trees and bones of animals in the desert. He is uncertain about what he said earlier. He does not understand why a single living soul is just empty buildings standing at the very edge of a steep rock. He remembers the stories that he heard on the way here. They say, in these parts is full of all sorts of unclean, and at night even the dead wander here. The guy suggests that the residents are already tired of enduring all these trials and went further into the territory. It is at this moment that he has a new idea. Going to one of the empty huts, Keita with anxiety notices that the sun is almost set. He decides that the night is much safer in the hut than the risk of meeting monsters in the open air. But suddenly something attracts his attention. He notices a large stone gate in the building where he was going to spend the night. It visible as soft diamond with sharp ends as on the left labels. Interested, it goes closer and goes inside. There, the guy notices a stone statue of a girl with wings. He suggests that the locals worship their gods, but immediately notices the statue is dilapidated. Kaito believes that this place has long been forgotten and left him. He respects the statue with respect, calls it a large one, and requests it to allow him to spend the night in one of the corners of the temple this night. The guy opens a suitcase and gets a cloth, carefully wipes the statue, especially pays attention to wings and face. When he finishes, he gladly looks at the result of his work and smiles. The Chiyote stands near the wall, puts a sword next to him and wrapped in a blanket. Once again he looks at a statue illuminated by the full moonlight. He quietly wishes her good night. In the morning he wakes up, leaning his cheek to the corner of the suitcase. It opens your eyes and feels confused for a moment. His body trembles slightly. White dust dances around. The guy mentally notes that the awakening turned out to be terrible, and, coughing up, expels the sand from his mouth, which has managed to get there. He looked at his hand, and everything swam before his eyes. Thoughts are spinning around the fact that he cannot fall asleep for a long time, whether because of a cold stone bed, or because he knows he was kicked out. In order to disperse the darkness in his head and drive away the dust that prevents you from seeing, he turns his head away. The guy decides that he should wait a little while the thoughts are clear, and it is necessary to get acquainted with the local. He also understands that you need to find a good bed for rest. He thinks that this ability was the reason for his expulsion, and if everything is lost, why not use it now? Its palms are filled with energy. Kaito claps his hands, activating his skill. Waves of energy diverge from this place. The skill wraps him, and the guy opens his eyes with a certain doubt. But what he sees is a true surprise. He cannot believe what he saw, so impressed that he pleases happily from happiness. The young man with delight notes that his head finally became clear, and he feels great. He understands that he can now wake up anywhere, and will still be full of energy and joy. Overflowing, it is drawn and comes out to meet a new day. He sees a gloomy desert and feels sorry for the fact that the reality has not disappeared, even if it is already easy in his head. Suddenly his attention is drawn to some sound. The ground is shaken by a powerful roar. The hero opens his eyes wide from surprise and shock. The earth under the feet of the hero suddenly shudders, and he loses balance. He understands with horror. An earthquake began. Behind him the temple begins to collapse rapidly. Kaito does not understand what is happening, and why the earth under his feet is strangely trembling. A strong roar forced stones from the ceiling of the temple to fall directly on the statue. The statue splits in half, and a charming girl with long hair and white dress appears in her place. It flies up on the wings, and a sign is shining above her head. She opens her eyes and looks at Kaito. He, a little beaten after the earthquake, turns his eyes back and thinks that this girl was probably inside the statue. She approaches him and asks him sternly whether he is the one who will be declining. The guy recedes back, puzzled by her question. He takes his hands, collects all his courage, and seems to be interested in her name in response. The girl shyly calls herself Sierra. Sierra enjoys the sun's rays sitting on the ruins of the temple. Kaito is thinking at this time because he was convinced that he was in the temple himself and does not understand where this girl came from. For a moment, it even seemed that she had her back. It encourages him to think that Sierra may not be a person. He looks carefully at her, and she watches him. The guy draws attention to her back. No hint of wings. He realizes that it is foolish to draw conclusions only through guesses and returns to talking to her. Kaito asked if he could turn to her in her name, and in response she promised to call him so. He wants to ask her something. The girl listens carefully. Kaito tells him that he was kicked out yesterday, and now he should become an Algard. He adds that in the morning he felt a strong impetus, like an earthquake, and it was then that he met her. The guy asks Sierra directly who she is. Big, shiny wings unfold behind the girl's back. Nimbus again appears over her head, and she calmly says that he is the Archangel. Kaito looks at her with surprise. He cannot believe that he has just heard. Sierra says she went down to the ground about 100 years ago. The guy recalls how he read it in a history textbook. Then lived different races, saints and demons, but he always considered it just fairy tales. He looks at her wings and a nimbus and is sure that a real angel is in front of him. It seems to him as if he touches with his own hands of something mythical. She says that she has long been locked here. The kite is amazed by her words. The girl confesses that she wanted to wake up for many years, but she couldn't even move. The guy is stunned by her and asks Sierra why she was sealed. She replies uncertainly that she does not remember this at all. He does not stop asking her who made her, from where she came from, and why she came down to the ground. All his questions only shrugs her shoulders and replies that she does not remember anything. Kaito is surprised. They say this angel is very forgetful. She closes her eyes, remembering that sound. He was pleasant and unexpected. She felt the fog in her head and the whole body gradually dispelled, and after all the Gaemor realized that she finally woke up. The guy tries to understand what sound she hears and decides to take advantage of his ability. Mysterious signs appear on his palms and he clasps sharply. Sierra looks at Kaito as he activates his ability. She confirms that this sound has woke her up. He was pleasant and helped her come to her senses. She says Kaito woke her up. The guy is surprised to realize that this is true. He looks at his hand, struck by the fact that his abilities were able to awaken the Archangel. And the result is contrary to everything he considered logical. He clenches his fist with confidence, realizing that it was his efforts that Sierra woke up, and returns to the girl. Kaito, sitting opposite her, smiles and offers her to move to him. His proposal is surprised by her. He explains that he was very worried about the possibility of losing the house, and remained alone until he met it. The guy believes that once he broke the seal, he should take responsibility for it. He asks to turn to him and thinks that if she does not remember her life before she got under the press, she probably also is very lonely. He shared with her his thoughts, that they both better stay together. The guy confessed that she wanted to be near her, until she at least a little mention of her past. He asked if she was not against this idea, and honestly added that he would understand if she needed to leave. She rushes forward, slightly knocking the guy off his feet, and enthusiastically agrees to his proposal, stating that he will go with him. He looks at her stunningly without waiting for such a reaction, and she shyly lowers her eyes down. Kairo smiles and agrees that this is really a wonderful agreement. They sit on the floor of the destroyed temple, and he smiles, saying that they will live here from now on. The girl happily agrees with him. Because of the destroyed wall, the skeleton suddenly emerges in a long mantle. The guy immediately stops and shakes his breath without taking his eyes off. The skeleton suddenly opens the mouth. The guy bounces back with fear, reaching out his hand as if he were protecting Sierra. He screams loudly, calling the skeleton the dead and the real monster. Kato confidently grabs the sword, waves it and prepares for a blow, while saying that the rumors are true. Skeletons began to appear on all sides, and there were more and more. He asks Sierra to stand his back to protect her. Sierra asks if he can overcome all enemies. Pointing the sword to a sinister spirit, he confidently replies that everything will be well and he will definitely protect it. Seeing this, Sierra lifts his finger and a glow breaks out of it. It pronounces lightning spell, and a powerful stream of electricity affects the skeletons. Kaito stands for a surprise, not believing his eyes. A wave is raised from a powerful blow that a man throws into the air and he flies at a considerable distance. Sierra instantly rushes after him, straightens his wings and catches Kaito right in the air. She asks how he feels, and he, a little shaking, replies that everything is fine. Carrying him between the clouds, Kaito said that they eventually protected him. They fly past the place where her attack hit. There is now a huge and deep crater, and Kaito marks his size with surprise, thinking that he should rely on her strength more often. They were on the ground, and the guy suggested looking for other people. He also points out that Lively will not work here because of constant attacks of monsters. He advises to take an example of those who once lived in these parts and look for a different, safer place. At that moment, people came to them and sincerely thanked for the fact that they had won the monster, which everyone was persecuted. Surprised, they looked around and saw a chunky man with a long hair. He asked in a harsh voice why they appeared on his land. Kaito holds Sierra behind himself, protecting her from danger. The stranger goes closer and asks if they need something in these parts. Sierra looks at one of the locals and notes that he is very reminiscent of the skeletons they have fought with. The same thin, and his skull looks almost the same. She points to him with his finger and exclaims that he belongs to the undead, already preparing for the attack. But Kaito stops her, explaining it loudly that it is only ordinary residents of this area. A man with long hair wary of heroes, crossing his arms on his chest. The guy believes that he finally met the inhabitants of these lands. However, from first, they do not look too friendly, and the guy begins to worry if they will accept him. But here the man suddenly and kindly smiles, turning to Kaito and asking if they will answer his question. At this point, the guy was ready to hear any reaction, just not that. The man looks carefully at the hero's cloak, on which the embroidered coat of arms of the Felbach family, and says he knows who the Kaito is and heard about him. The guy standing nearby confirms his words. The man confidently states that he was not mistaken. He warns the heroes to be careful, because in these parts is full of dead who attack anyone. The guy nods and agrees. Kaido wanted to say something, but it was at this point that the name of the man was announced. His friend turned to him in the name of Helmut. The man asked the runny nose anxiously, but a friend only sadly shook his head because he could not give an accurate answer. He reports that they have found the undead nest, but it is completely destroyed and broken. The Helmut cannot believe his eyes. Keita realizes that Sierra has arranged everything, so he bows to the peasants and sincerely apologizes. The Helmut does not understand why he apologizes, but his friend guesses what is the matter. Taito is asked if it has caused the emergence of this swindle. The young man with confidence in his voice replies in the affirmative. The peasants were stunned by this news. Kaito reflected. Despite the fact that they only defended themselves, they still attacked a foreign territory. He was not sure whether people would believe that Sierra was behind it and that she only attacked to protect him. The guy acknowledges that he did it and says he is ready to be responsible for his act. An angel looks at him with surprise and confusion. Homa is very interested in the details, but at first he invites everyone to move to a safe place, to their village. They go between the rocks and finally get to one place. Helmut shows down. A small village is visible in the valley. Having settled in the house, Helmut is a local organizer in Algard. Sierra, which is the complete opposite of Kratos, lies on the couch behind him. Helmut addresses them and says she wants to thank. The guy is confused, does not understand what exactly. Then the man explains that they managed to get rid of the undead. Helmut reassures everyone and says that it is not necessary to worry, because it is thanks to them that they will become calmer. So he does not think to condemn them. Kaito nods, making it clear that he understands everything. The man adds that if he intended to reproach them, he would never invite them to his home. The Helmut solemnly stated that it was time to take the case and asked why they gathered here. Kido agreed and extended him a letter he handed over with him. The guy tells him that he was appointed by Lord Algard, and now he intends to settle here and rule these lands. Helmut notices a letter with the seal of the Felbach family. Kaido understands that being a leader for his elderly people will not be easy, but he sincerely seeks to take care of the territory entrusted to him, and tries to make this land better for everyone. He guesses that everyone is surprised, why he has got involved in new problems through the young manager, but promises to make every effort to prove he can become a real good leader. Helmut calmly replies that he has nothing to confess. Kaito, wary, thinks about what he hints at, but the man smiles broadly and says he already sees a real master now. Kaito is amazed at such trust and thanks sincerely for accepting. The guy decides that everyone thinks about him only because of his known family name, and asks them not to draw such false conclusions. He explains that although his name Felbach, he has almost no links with aristocrats. Helmut exclaims that it doesn't matter. He clenched his fist and confidently stated that they had destroyed the outlook of the undead, which for many years had terrified their land. According to him, the hunted creatures were cowards who did not dare to resist and just fled, looking for a shelter. Their ruler also did. Kaita sincerely apologized for the fact that the previous owner of these lands had been with them, and confessed that he would be ashamed of his predecessor. Helmut only waved his hand and assured that it was not necessary to worry about it. He extends Kiddo's hand for shaking and asks him to remain kind to ordinary people, such as they, and yet, to be a true aristocrat who is aware of his responsibility and cares for his subordinates. Helmut states that he would like to have a lord similar to Kiddo. Kaido himself is amazed at these words. He connects his hands on his knees and tilts his head. Tears of gratitude appear in the eyes, but he hastily wipes them with his hands. Kaido draws attention that it is no longer an aristocrat, which Helmut laughs and agrees with him. They tightly press each other's hands. The man jokingly points out that the expelled lord in the abandoned estate is not so different from them. In response, surprised exclamations are heard. When other villagers learn that the guy became a new lord, they are interested in whether Kaido has some special abilities. A little awkward, he replies that his skill is awakening. A short-haired man claims that he has never heard of such a skill, so he considers it weak. Another, very skinny man, wonder, if so, how did they manage to destroy the undead nest? Kato thinks to himself that they will not believe anything, as if all this was done by an angel. He imagines that the girl stands behind and says her name. Helmut feels that this name is already familiar with him. Sierra complains that they have been talking for too long, and she is already tired of waiting for him. The guy apologizes to her, and Helmut suddenly remembers where he has heard this name. He exclaims that it is really Sierra, the Archangel he read about in the chronicles of their empire. According to legends, in her life she destroyed many demons. The girl looks at him, and the man understands exactly that she is really she. Her face is known to the textbooks. She sighs, closes her eyes, and calmly fits. The man recalls that the textbooks were written. She was sealed on the battlefield. but he could not think that it had happened on their land. A thin man wondered if Helmet really believed that she is an angel of art. He leans to her and says that such a cute face cannot belong to the Archangel. Sierra wipes her eyes, and again it seems as if she stands in front of her the same skeleton with whom they have recently fought. She speaks something in the language of the undead and prepares the attack, confidently pointing her finger on the man. At the same moment, a powerful lightning flash included in the building. A huge hole suddenly appears in the house, and the man is barely avoiding a deadly blow. He asks if the awakening skill has finally released her after many years of imprisonment. Kaido kept the girl in her arms, deflecting her blow. He confirmed the words of a stranger. The girl replied that it was Kaito who woke her up, and from now on he was her master. The guy is genuinely surprised by her words, because he had never heard anything like this before. A thin man notes that this is a real miracle. They have a new lord, who is determined to breathe life in almost abandoned land, and also to get on his side of the Archangel. In the eyes of a man, joy shines, and he says that he also recognizes Kaito with their future master. He is convinced that the guy will handle his responsibilities, and together with Helmet, they shake his hands. The rest also begin to chandish its names and Sierra. The guy looks around with joy on his face. Sierra, with his eyes closed, lies calmly with his hand. Kira realizes that this is how people learned who he and this girl. Kaito activates his skill in Helmet. His eyes flash a bright fire, and the skin begins to glow. The man says his skill is truly amazing, and he has never woke up in such a wonderful condition. The guy agrees, confessing that he felt the same. At this point, Sierra converts his attention to them. Kaito thanked the Chelmet for his help. He told him about the problem that the day before was all Algard. The biggest difficulties are to find money for food and drinking water. He learned that nearly 100 people live in the Algard area. The climate and nature on the northern and southern borders are very different. Helmet lives with the family in the south. There is a land that is convenient for living, but the soil in those parts is dry and exhausted. Unlike the southern lands, the northern part is quite different. There is a forest full of wealth and resources. A group of people with incredible force appeared in the surrounding lunch daily. They came here in search of resources. This time he was with them. Kaito thought that moving all the people to this place and making it the main home is a good idea. However, there is one problem. Monsters that attack unexpectedly from the rear are hidden in the shade. Here they have a huge advantage. For example, the hero faces a giant boar with horns, which fiercely rushes to him. The hero had just prepared for the attack, but it was at this moment that Helmet's axe flies just in his forehead. The hero tells that even if all the Algorithians united, they would not be able to cope with the monsters. For monsters, these lands are a true paradise, so people would inevitably be permanent attacks. That is why they chose lives in the desert, because they only have to fight there. They return to the village, and a skinny man comes out to meet them. She is wondering that they managed to catch. Sierra carries a huge load on his wings, for which Helmet holds firmly. The man exclaims, wondering what a great win. Helmwood with delight noted that Sierra was able to attract and bring such a giant to their territory. He sincerely praises prey, and adds that it is a real find, all thanks to Sierra's efforts. The Sierra blossoms from the words of approval that is being addressed to her address, and a light smile appears on her face. Meanwhile, they roast the boar. Chiyote falls to the ground, reporting that everything is already gone with food. Helmet praises his idea because now you can cook fresh meat. He notes that if the boar did not get here alone, the meat would have long gone bad. The guy is glad that the man understood his idea. Sierra tends to them on their wings, holding 2 large pieces of meat on the bone. She says with a smile that one of these pieces was prepared specifically for him. Kaito thanks her, adding that she can always rely on her. The girl is embarrassed and red with embarrassment. She adds that she has brought something more and throws a girl in a black skirt at their feet. They surprise the girl unconscious, dressed in worn clothes and hat with ears that resemble cat. They look at a stranger with surprise, suddenly realizing that a girl is in front of them. She sighs hard. It is immediately evident that she feels bad. Pied in despair exclaims that she is still breathing. He is concerned about Helmet, emphasizing that it is necessary to take care of her immediately. The man wants to say something but does not find words. He shows his friends, who are usually treated in their own ways, and notes that there is no one who really understands medicine. The man turns to Sierra, thinking that if she is an archangel, he will probably be able to heal wounds. But Sierra only is indifferent to everything, calmly biting a piece of meat before dinner. She looked at her hand and recognized. Yes, she has magic, but mainly her forces are directed at the attack. The girl honestly confessed that she could not treat. Having created a small electrical discharge in the meat, she states that a girl can burn if necessary. Kaita categorically denies, shouting that he realized there is no salvation for the girl. The guy looks at the big wound on her thigh and thinks of who will be able to save this girl. The girl was relocated to one of the houses that Helmut has allocated. Kaito thanked him, but he just said that gratitude was not needed because the house was initially planned for Lord himself. The man added that if something else is needed, you can turn to him without hesitation. Kano asks him to bring a lot of clean and soft cloths, as well as water to wash his wounds. Helmut agrees to help, and the Sierra, meanwhile, sits in the room and watches carefully at everything. The girl asks if Kito can heal her, and whether he has therapeutic magic. He replies that he does not have such magic. The guy thinks that nevertheless, he gave him a little medical knowledge, so he is able to provide first aid. It opens a suitcase and gets several jars. The guy prepares medicinal powders and carefully treats her wounds. He is about to sew her most serious wound. The guy confidently decides he should try. Carefully taken to work, focusing on the seams. There are reddish flaps of bandages around the floor. A new day comes in the morning, but Kito looks exhausted. His eyes are blurred after a sleepless night. Sitting, he leans forward, lowers his head and puts his hands on his knees. His hands tremble strongly. He again applies his skill to himself to wake up. Only by activating it, he immediately feels relief and begins to come to life. Kaito notices that every time he's better able to control his ability, and now it no longer hurts Sierra. He kneads his shoulders and looks at the water vessel standing near the bed of a wounded girl. The guy notices that she still does not give any signs of awakening. He put a cool cloth on her forehead to lower the temperature. Looking at her, he mentally remembers how he fussed around her throughout the night, but it seems to have changed nothing. He decides to test his ability. A sign appears on his hand. Thinking that he has already managed to awaken even an angel from a long sleep, he hopes that it can help this girl. He carefully raises his hand to her face. After another analysis of his abilities, Kito realized that awakening was not a restorative skill. Despite its power, it does not relieve fatigue and pain. With this understanding, he carefully removed the fabric from her forehead. So he decided that if a girl restores strength and falls asleep, it should not be disturbed. On her leg, the bandage has already leaked with blood. The guy twists the cloth into a bucket of water. He thinks that it's time to change the bandages. Suddenly, his belly grumbles loudly. The guy realizes that it is time to have breakfast, because the least he needs to faints from hunger now. The girl gradually comes to her senses and quietly confesses that he is very hungry. She looks at the hero with tired eyes, and the guy replies that she understands her condition. He looks at a girl who just woke up, nearlessly crying from joy, welcomes her on a good morning, and asks if he woke her up. Sierra also opens his eyes, A grown girl tries to get out of bed. Kaito immediately asks her not to do it. She asks where he is. The guy replies that he is also interested in hearing her story, but at first he suggests having a breakfast. The village slowly comes to life. People go outside, greeting a new day. After breakfast, she tells that she already understood what land she got onto. She thanks everyone for his help and finally calls her name, Lisa Einhorn. She confesses that he is an adventure search. The guy notes that she really has the appearance of a traveler. The girl tells how she went to the forest with the necessary materials with her friends, but they attacked a giant monster. She says she tried to protect her friends, but could not. Then she asks if any of them saw her friends. The man replies that Sierra found it and did not meet anyone else. The girl with anxiety hopes that nothing happened to her friends. Lisa plunges into gloomy thoughts. Imagines himself abandoned, with wounds and bruises, quite lonely, without a single friend. Sierra confesses that it was used as a bait and just left it. Hearing this, he looks stunned at Sierra. A young girl whispers to a girl that even if her words are true, such cruel things should not be said aloud. Lisa laughs embarrassed, feeling inconvenience in this situation. The guy sympathetically states that Sierra seems to be right. Lisa, with a sad smile, realizes that she was thrown again. The guy clung to every word again, and the girl only claps in the palm of her hand and assures that you do not do anything. And it was not necessary to expect something special from the second adventure with such friends. She acknowledges that she did not even have time to build a trusting relationship. Kaito draws parallels with his own life and feels anxious. He squeezes her hands on his hips, understanding. Although she laughs, her body gives out. She is not at all jokes, because again she feels undesirable. Then he asks, if it happens for the first time, why does she return every time? She admits with a smile that she is engaged in this to provide herself, because she is an orphan. The young man stunned his eyes, hearing this. She says that as a child, the church gave her shelter. But when she turned 14, she left from there, and since then has long been giving herself advice. She confesses that she has nowhere to go back. She has no home at all. She heard that when an adventure seeker performs a task, she is sure to receive a reward that can be lived. Because she is an orphan, her only way is to become an adventure seeker. In his thoughts, he begins to compare their lives. He believes that from the very beginning it was not easy. Algard is now experiencing difficult times, but still remains the 12th largest province in the empire. Considering his hand, the guy says that his lord seeks to do everything possible to make this place better. He notes, it is indifferent how many people here and what position they occupy. It is important for him to feel good. Kaito reaches out her hand and asks if she would like to stay with them here. Sierra responds to such an unexpected offer. She is stunned by how he offered her the same during their first meeting. Lisa asked again if it was true. The guy confirmed and assured that she could live quietly here. She would be given a roof over her head and food. Kato looked at her confidently as if he wanted to show everything would be fine. From such a proposal, she has tears in her eyes. She cannot hold back emotions and begins to cry happily and sown with joy. Kaito is in a hurry, trying to explain that he did not want to bring her to tears. Wiping her eyes, she soothes him. She is not crying from sadness. She still tries to hold back tears, but explains that it is tears of joy and agrees to stay here. The girl puts her hand in his palm and confesses with a smile that he is glad to get acquainted with him. She removes the cross from her neck, gently kisses him, and thanks the great angel who brought her here. Sierra stands in front of them and says she brought her here. Lisa returns to her, paying attention. Kairos recalls that he forgot to present Sierra as an angel. She turns on her image of an angel. A spectacular wings appear behind her back, and a nimbus shines above her head. Sierra confirms that it is indeed an archangel, which has recently been awakened after a long sleep in the seal. Lisa looks at her with a passionate look, not believing that all this really happens. Sierra is slightly threatening that she does not interfere with the meeting with Kaito, but she is not going to live with them under one roof. The boys think hard, because everyone thinks that they are competing with each other. Lisa, embarrassed that she did not ask the Sierra permission. She closes her eyes and turns to her, calling the mistress, the Archangel Sierra. The girl still remains a little tense. Lisa turns to Sierra and says that if she does not deny, she would like to stay in Algorma. Continuing to name Sierra Madame Archangel, Lisa involuntarily softens her heart. Hearing these words, Sierra feels her anger changes to mercy and looks satisfied. She told Kaito that she had nothing against the forest, and Kaito in a joking manner noted that he now knew how to win her commitment. Sierra gently stroked Lisa on her head, like a mentor who supports her student. In the meantime, the guy promised to tell all Helmet to keep everyone Lisa on the eye. He mentally noted that Sierra is a real strong girl, and even if she liked Lisa, her safety is guaranteed. Kaito leaves home, and Helmet is already waiting for him. He immediately says he heard everything he had just been talking about. He asks if the guy wants them to create a friendly atmosphere as soon as possible to get used to their company. Kaito confirms that this is exactly what he wanted, and adds that he would be glad if others join him. The man is glad that he did not hope for something else from his lord. He assures that they are sure to solve this problem. He proudly tells everyone that a new resident appeared in their village. Helmet notes that thanks to Kaito, a second new resident has already appeared in the village. Lisa stands by the window, looks carefully at the street and welcomes everyone who addresses it. In response, the peasants sincerely smile with the League, greet her in good words and do not spare pleasant compliments. For the first time, the hero notices that this is not a sign of expulsion or loneliness. Helmet, rising to the ground, announces, "Everything is decided. Today they will have a holiday." Everyone around them supports this idea and joyfully join the celebration. On a cloudless night, when the full moon shined brightly in heaven, a new resident appeared in Algard. The hero wakes up and finds that two girls sleep next to him, one side. He has never been in such a situation before, so he feels confused. He quickly runs away from home. The guy uses awakening several times in a row. Local residents notice it and greet it. They are wondering why he got up so early, joke whether he now lives with those girls, 3 of them, and ask if he liked yesterday's party. With an empty look, he turns to men and corresponds to the affirmative. His confidence was so undeniable that the hero could not even fall asleep that night. Morning in the village, Helmet, Chiyote, and Thin Man do their own business. The man approaches Lisa, rejoicing that she can already walk. Lisa thanks them for their help. They say that all the villagers were very worried about it. They say that although she appeared here recently, she always meets them with a sincere smile and treats them with extraordinary kindness, as if she would come to them just from heaven. A skinny man confesses that he envies Kaito, and he invites him to think about his words from the point of view of morality. He recalls that he suggested living together, but he was so imbued with his story that he could not do otherwise. But who generally states that they have a real angel? A skinny man notes that Sierra really causes fear, and Kaito thinks that she has already become known because of her actions. Helmet says that Sierra copes with her business. She destroys monsters and hunts the best. The man adds that he is a real Sierra fan. Kaito, picking up the conversation, says that once it has come about Sierra, he wants to share the story she told him. Sierra, along with the forest, approach men. Lisa apologizes that it was difficult. Helmet notices that her clothes have become lighter, now on her shorts instead of a skirt. She explains that after breaking her pants, she decided to alter her clothes altogether. The thin man grunts that the changes turned out to be too radical, as if the clothes were just torn. Kato has wondered if he is not talking about the monster sometimes. Lisa said that Sierra herself once confessed that she was about it. The man smiles while others look at him without trusting his behavior. They return to the issue of water deficiency. They are in the backyard of the house. Kaito explains that they need water daily for everyday life, but you can reach it only by moving to the other side of the mountain, and it will take the south. Lisa, together with the guy, thank the helmet for help. The man only confusedly shrugs his shoulders. He did not realize what their gratitude. He says he sees nothing wrong with this, because he is his duty as a village. After these words, everyone is so moved that they cannot restrain their grateful. However, Kato notes that most of this water is used for drinking. Lisa agrees with him and adds that if there was more water, it would be possible to cook food and buy. The helmet replies that they have long been accustomed to such conditions and dirt is not news for them. Kato notes that even newcomers to the village are all dirty, only Sierra remains neat. Lisa, a little shyly pulling her hat on her head, asks the angel how she manages to retain such beauty and purity, even in similar circumstances. The girl explained that her skin is covered with a charming shell. She added with a smile that she would not get dirty if she does not desire, and even the rain does not wet it if she does not want. Lisa looks at the angel with delight. Helmet skeptically notes that he has already said it before, but it is too difficult to collect water, although he is genuinely sorry for climbing in her bath. Cinema says he is looking for a way to get more water without digging the ground. He is told that he has already become dirty. He is asked what method he came up with. Maybe it's a digging of a well? The guy told how he had his free time to take a walk in the village and see how people tried to dig a well. He saw that after many unsuccessful attempts, the peasants realized the method of trial and mistakes. The way they use now is the best. He looked at his hand and confessed that the words of the seerers about solving this problem made a strong impression on him. The young man reminds everyone that in the Algard region he has only one territory, and in the east of this region is the city of Waterblausen. The heroes were amazed by learning about the existence of such a city. Kaito added that they can take on the experience and skills of residents to improve the technology of creating an internal water supply system. In addition, this city also has a statue, similar to Sierra. There is one creature similar to Sierra Angel. They are faced with a dilapidated, abandoned city, and in the middle of it stands a hill. They doubt that the Talon of Budu, like the whole city on the water, has probably been destroyed for a long time. Lisa notices that they are in the city for the third day. It is hard to believe that it has passed so much time from their last adventure. And the guy thinks what technologies are used here and what happened to the angel. Together they decide to continue the search until they come across something really important. He talks to the forest, surprised as they died for 3 days, as if they were a moment, and remember how difficult this journey seemed. Sierra, standing nearby, listens to their conversation with distrust. At the top of the hill, a dilapidated temple is visible. They head up to him. Lisa is wondering why all important buildings are being erected so high. Kaito explains, this is the city of water, so the location above makes the flow of water from top to bottom. He explains that it is probably that you can find the necessary water sources and the necessary technologies. They climbed to the top and saw a statue of the angel, which almost completely covered the variety of flowers. Creto notes that this statue is almost indistinguishable from Sierra. Lisa is amazed at its size and true beauty and enthusiastically calls the statue of the creation of Ununice. Sierra said that she has a strange charm that does not allow the statue to collapse. She also noted, Ununice is able to take care of herself. The girl appealed to Kato to use awakening. Sierra says that the angel of creation was once one of her 2 wings, and although she lost her memory, her name Ununice is still familiar. The girl insists that instead of being sealed, it is better to go with her. Sierra says that Ununice is capricious and very selfish. She is convinced that if Ununice decides that she woke up on her own, she will definitely not share her strength. Kaito begins to think. The more he learns about her, the less he has the desire to shoot the seal. He thought that in the city they did not happen any interesting technologies, but also did not want to return home with empty hands. So he strongly stated that they should try again. Kaito lifts his hands and awakens the statue, investing in it. They are watching for a while, and suddenly something unexpected happens. On the site of the statue now stands an angel that flies up. A sophisticated girl in a white dress wakes up with a calm smile, notices that she was sleeping very firmly, and she is wondering whether Kaito woke her up. The girl has long hair, a short feathers dress. She is sweet. She is still in the air, slightly clamped, watching those who dared to disturb her sleep. Lisa and Kido are so amazed that they cannot pronounce a single word. Sierra looks at her almost indifferent, and Ununice is welcome and says they have not seen themselves for a long time. The girl matches greetings. Ununice points out with a smile that Sierra is very straight in communication. He says it is a little strange because the girl should be sealed. Sierra nods, confirming it, and tells that she woke up just like her. The girl advises to thank Kaito, pointing to the boy and saying his name. Ununice looks interested in her husband. Gathering with the spirit, he politely welcomes her and officially calls his name. He confirms the words of Sierra and explains that he only removed the seal from her to listen to his request. She smiles, surprised that the ordinary person managed to remove the seal from her, and calls him interesting. Kaito tells her that there is a sharp lack of water in his edges. He says that thanks to her magic, this issue can be resolved. He genuinely asks her to help the residents of Algard, but the university only smiles a gentle smile and refuses. He was completely stunned by such an answer. Sierra and reproach turns to Ununice, noting that ordinary people cannot use angels as servants. She does not understand why Ununice so stubbornly wants to serve him. She proudly assures that she will only help when something really excites her curiosity and mind. That is why she explains when the city was at risk, she decided to seal herself. Hearing this, the guy is genuinely surprised. She complains that she took care of the city, but it was only necessary to leave it for a moment, as it fell down on its own. She hopes that he does not think of being instructed to take care of his city. Kaito believes that, nevertheless, she always stayed near Bluzin, and he was also interested in what she told about the destruction of the city. The guy asked if the blouse was a beautiful city. Ununice said with confidence that yes, because it was her capital's home. The young man confidently states that it is sure to make Algard with a rich and beautiful city, no worse than Bluzin, but maybe even better. Ununice is angry and replies that it will still not work. He looks at her with determination in her eyes and she unconsciously takes a step back. Kaito asks Ununice to watch his city closely, because it will ever become even more beautiful than Bluzin. He is convinced that Ununice himself will be interested to see how it happens, because such a spectacle really captures. Ununice remembers his city at a time when it was full of life and residents worshipped her love. A barely noticeable smile appeared on her face, and lifting her finger, she said the spell. She lifts her finger up, and for a moment Kaito's shoes falls the first few drops. Soon they get more and more. It starts rain. The guy widens his eyes in surprise, and Lisa happily runs and exclaims, "Hooray!" Sierra smiles and confirms, it is the true magic of creation. She smiles the hero, remaining intact in the rain, and says he was able to attract her attention. She warns, if he has gone so far, now she will have to ask him to show her these places. Heroes perceive this as a good sign and rejoice in this news, and Ununice playfully descends to them to the ground. She looked at her destroyed city last, gently saying that this rain falls for him, and quietly wants him to rest in peace. On her cheek, one and only tear rolls. She does not look from the night city, and thinks her beloved blouse with a deer of a peaceful dream. Thanks to the magic, Ununice can create anything except living things. Wood, paper, stone, iron or water are any material. When Ununice created water just in her palms, the residents of Algard were amazed and immediately lined up in the queue to taste this amazing water. Ununice released a powerful stream that rushed to the crowd, and people greedily grabbed every drop, rejoicing and shouting how good and pleasant they are. Lisa ran the village and could not but admire the beautiful place of the Archangel of creation. Even the calm Sierra did not remain indifferent to the majestic buildings she saw around. The Carnage was amazed at how much it had changed in just half a day of its absence in the village. Once almost destroyed, the village was now quickly rebuilt and blossomed with the advent of the young man. However, Sierra did not share such admiration, because the abilities of the angel's creation did not impress her too much. Lisa breaks into Kito's house and happily announces that she has returned. However, the hero is so passionate about his business that he does not even notice it at first. Kaito constantly draws sketches of plants and schemes for Ununice, working at a fast pace. Ununice adopts the proposed ideas for landscaping the territory with enthusiasm. At the same time, the difference in the abilities of people and archangels is clearly visible. Along with the exhausted Chiyote, Ununice looks good and full of strength. Having received new plans, the creation angel immediately rushes to the way. She is always ready to immediately embody the new idea of the Lord. Meanwhile, the hero works hard with the documents, but finds a moment to congratulate Sierra and Forrest. The girls were increasingly worried about Chiyote because he was exhausting himself with continuous work. They even joked that it looked like a real merc. The hero himself confessed that he had not slept for several days, so their words were near the truth. But instead of finally relaxing, Chiyote uses the awakening skill, enhancing her with his own fist. Lord confessed that he was striking and at the same time depletes the restless desire for Ununice to constantly create something. But he is also grateful to her for how Algard develops rapidly. Lisa supported his words, adding that when she returned here, she did not even recognize these places. The boys discussed how the Ununice-built temple turned into a true Algard. Chiyote also confessed that though he was grateful to Sierra's friend for their help with architecture, he would prefer to entrust all the construction of the creation angel. Lord also notes that now all the homes that Young are erected have a avant-garde look. According to Chiyote, a private house created by the creation angel resembles a large piece of tofu with a spotted pattern, and the temple of the Ununice master seems too huge. The Algorian house seems to him just huge, so spacious that you can even go inside. Lisa looks at Chiyote's house and says he looks like a real castle. The hero cannot admit, in this building really something from the medieval fortress. However, as Helmut said, when Lord himself began to develop plans for Ununice, the residents of the city finally sighed with relief. The buildings became appropriate, that is, necessary and useful. Wells and warehouses for storage of food appeared, and the majestic angel temple of creating, which was rising above the whole city, decided to use as a guard tower. It turned out that Helmut brought a small sprout from the nursery for the Chiyote. Chiyote said he asked Ununice to create a room where something could be grown. The hero was worried that the creation angel could not cope with the arrangement, and in this case he would not grow. But his fears were in vain. Eventually the plant was brought from the center of cultivation. It was a small sprout of tomato. The ruler was so moved by this plant that he wrapped her to his cheek, like a little pet. Helmut shared his impressions. He was also very surprised, because earlier all attempts to grow something ended in failure. But now, thanks to the new way of growing plants that has proposed and embodied Chiyote, the first results have finally emerged. Helmut initially thought that Lord Algard had used some magic, but Chiyote confessed that it was not the magic, but the skills and knowledge he received through aristocratic education. The hero explained that there should be special microorganisms for a good harvest in the soil. That is why he made efforts to allow these microorganisms to settle the land of Algard. At first, Lisa did not understand how these places could be inhabited. Then Chiyote explained to her, to populate microorganisms, it is necessary to mix forest soil from the north, food residues and other organic waste. At the same time, he stressed that water is the most valuable resource for crops. Thanks to the introduction of Ununice, the first step to full self-sufficiency of the city was taken in the Algard, because the main path to it is the opportunity to extract water independently with the help of newly established structures. The creation angel flies over the city. Her attention is attracted by an unusual aroma that seductively attracts her to Chiyote's house. It penetrates the window, getting into the room, from where the seductive smell flows. The source of the appetizing aroma was the juicy fried meat of wild boar with milk. This dish was also called masishimashi, on an elephant. Lisa, who prepared the roast, invited Ununice to dine with them. The creation angel did not believe that the girl coped with everything on her own, but still decided to taste a piece. In a separate room, Chiyote and Helmut discussed the lack of labor in the city. Although water was no longer needed, the amount of work has only increased, especially because of accelerated construction and expansion of farming. Chiyote recalled that Algard is just developing and has not yet become a real city. Therefore, in order to interest people from other places and attract new workers, you need to come up with something special that would become the real highlight of this settlement. As they talked, Lisa came to the room carrying a hot dinner. The girl suggested taking a short break in dinner. While she put a fried dish on the table, the men already looked very hungry. Sierra was also offered goodies, but she treated with great care. She was a little embarrassed by such a habit during lunch, but she still dared to taste the finished ribs. Through joint efforts, dinner was ate very quickly. Sierra is unnoticed to understand the taste of the dish. The Archangel suddenly blooms with happiness, and a glowing smile appears on her peaceful face. The cheeks covers a light blush. It seems to be incredibly tasty to her. Dinner lasted. Ununice asked the girl interested in the ingredients of the dish. Lisa said that she added Chiyote mushrooms is a delicious and nutritious delicacy that is considered a real luxury. In the Empire, such mushrooms are sold at the highest price. The creation angel is admired by the taste of the dish and praises the forest for its culinary abilities, noting that Kato with helmet does not refrain from tears of happiness. But the girls shyly waved, they say. She did not do anything special. She just got very high-quality products. Lisa continued to talk about Chiyote mushrooms. She explained that these mushrooms are very difficult to collect because they grow in places where dangerous monsters live. However, this time, thanks to Sierra, the collection of mushrooms was surprisingly successful. Suddenly in Kato, a brilliant idea slept. The hero came up with how to solve the problem with labor. He suggested making Chiyote mushrooms with a branded product that Algard could sell empires. Kaito supported this idea with convincing arguments. If even the angels like these mushrooms, then those who want to buy the Chiyote at a favorable price will definitely find a lot. The angels thought about the proposal of the Lord. Sierra appealed to Kaito's plan. She, however, was more fond of mushrooms rather than the idea to sell them. The Archangel frankly stated that she would gladly support this plan if he could eat even more mushrooms thanks to him. Kaito appeared due to Sierra's genuine desire. He really relied on her support. Sierra announced a hunt for Chiyotes and went on the road without delay. She flies up sharply, grabs the hero for his leg, and assures that he will definitely help him collect mushrooms. Kaito carefully tries to explain to the angel that, rather, they help her, not her, given the difference in their strength and opportunities. Sierra, Lisa, and Kaito walked through the forest. The Archangel and the Adventure Seeker were cheerful and full of strength. They were confidently moving forward, leaving behind the exhausted aristocrat who barely climbed up the slope. It was evident that Kaito was not used to such long-term transitions and had already felt fatigue. This time, the heroes had to go deeper into the forest, much further than they usually went to the heart of the untouched thickets, because it was there that the Chiyote mushrooms grew. Sierra thought that the further you go into the forest, the more you come across rare and valuable ingredients and healing herbs. However, she did not forget, in these depths there are dangerous monsters, so you should always be alert here. Having warned her companions, Sierra immediately reassured them. While she is nearby, they were afraid of nothing. In fact, the Archangel could no longer wait when she finally got acquainted with delicious mushrooms. Kaito sincerely hoped that he would find a lot of mushrooms with his friends. But suddenly his gaze fell on a mysterious shiny plant. The hero found a strange flower in the grass, threw it carefully, and wondered, what is the plant that is and why is it so strange attracted his look? Lisa gladly reported that they finally got to the same place where she collected the rims last time. Kaito quickly prepared his bag and suggested that he start collecting mushrooms. The hero suddenly noticed that Sierra had disappeared somewhere. He began to look for her around, shout her on all sides. Lisa tried to reassure him and suggested that the Archangel just went forward. While they called Sierra, a giant monster suddenly appeared in front of them. The monster fiercely quarreled. Kaito was scared to death, but was able to grab the forest and partially cover the girl with herself. Suddenly, Sierra flew from the depths of the forest, holding something firmly in her hands, and without warning she rushed to the monster, saving her friends. Thanks to her courage, the monster was defeated. As always, Sierra boasted before Kaito and Lisa, which she found a huge Chiyote. Lisa rushed into the Archangel's arms, thanking her and calling her lady. Sierra, with childish simplicity and curiosity, asked what they had time to do during the time she was looking for a mushroom. Having collected the full basket of Hyodes, the characters returned home from the forest. The temple was already visible ahead, which was a sign for them. The house is quite close. The boys summed up their day and agreed that it was a fun adventure. They confessed that they were picking up many Chiyotes, and these fees almost destroyed the local ecosystem. While climbing that it could be cooked from mushrooms, Sierra had already been appropriated. Kaito turned to the Archangel, calling him to be prudent and not bring the situation to the dispute. Suddenly, the owner recalled that in addition to mushrooms, he brought something more from the forest. He called Sierra to consult. Kaito got a shiny flower. Lisa was very surprised, because she did not expect that he was gathering something other than Chiyote. She thought that this plant was incredibly good. The hero confessed that he feels something incomprehensible in this flower. It seemed to him that this plant was somehow related to angels. Then Kaito turned to Sierra, asking what she was thinking about. The Archangel looked discolored. She first saw this flower and did not recognize it at all. Suddenly, a stranger with a surprisingly long ears appeared in front of his friends. He leaned to Sierra and put his sword threateningly. Kaito and Lisa are confused and frightened because they do not understand what is happening around. A girl with unusual ears began on the way to Sierra, preventing the boys from interfering. She looked hasty and threatened them directly. demanding that they immediately give her what they brought from the forest. She called this thing a load. Kaito tries to guess who is an armed girl with long ears. Meanwhile, the foreigner does not cease to threaten Sierra. Suddenly, Lisa notices that the girl is not alone. The same long warriors have already appeared around the heroes, and they do not blow from security or trust. The armed girl confessed that she did not seek a fight. She only needs to finish her business and go as soon as possible. The girl with long ears again asked to give her mushrooms. Sierra calmly took advantage of the Archangel's force and destroyed the danger, leaving the aliens sideways. The threatening girl climbed into the air from the explosive wave and was left without weapons. The girl who lay without a sensation after a stroke, the edge of her ears heard her comrades justified. They assured that they had no evil intentions to the heroes, and explained that they pulled out the swords only to scare Kiddo and his friends a little. They were told that nothing was given in life, and they were beaten for it. However, the boys did not hide relief, because it turned out that the long-haired Sierra was not seriously injured. The girl with long ears gradually came to her senses. Her comrades were happy when she finally woke up. Kaito also realized that the girl had already woke up. The long-haired could not understand what was happening at this moment. Kato told her that when she fell to the ground, she fainted. The hero explained that he was taking their weapons at the request of Sierra. Although the angel did not feel anything evil from them, he decided that caution would not hurt. The ruler demanded explanations, who these foreigners and why they threatened him and his companions. The girl did not want to answer, so she just was silent. Lisa expressed her feelings with indignation. She sincerely tried to understand why Kaito did not understand that these people were real bandits. Lisa said that they have been accustomed to attacking travelers and merchants for a long time, so when an armed girl sent her sword to Sierra, she decided that she could act in the same way as robbers. But the girl was not confused. She proudly emphasized that the representatives of her race are special, and although there are robbers among people, such as she would never have gone. Lisa did not trust the long-lived and was very angry with her. Then Kaito called Lisa to calm down. Lord Algard assured that he wanted to do everything possible to make such an attack never repeat. He was relieved that everything ended well and no one was injured. However, fears were read in the voice. What would happen if someone else was in their place? Kaito said that if they aimed a sword on someone else and not on Sierra, he would never have forgiven them. The words of the hero struck everyone. People were even a little scared. In the actions of the young man clearly showed the features of a true leader and a caring lord. Kaito suggested that the girl make vows to put an end to the enmity and strengthen the peace between them. Kaito promised that he would forgive the attackers if they told him the true cause of his actions. Asiara's main character was the one who was blackmailing, so her thought was the most important. She agreed to it. Initially, a girl with long hair did not believe that they really wanted to forgive. Kaisha promised her, demonstrating her skills. The girl introduced herself. The name was Adele, and it turned out that she was an elf. The lord finally realized why she had such unusual ears. The Elfian explained that together with their comrades, they went to human lands, looking for a special ingredient that does not exist in the elfin forests. Elf once heard that this special ingredient carries the divine power of the real angel. He tasted incredibly, and still had a special property: cleans the body of all impurities. Chiyote called this mushroom a drop of dew from the sky. The characters were fascinated by this legend. Adelne's like-minded people did not expect to hear such frankness from her. They were lost. The elves tried to persuade their girlfriend, but she only continued to insist on her own. Adela said she was very upset when she saw a full basket of mushrooms, which was collected by the characters. She thought that Kaito and girls were ordinary fraudsters. In her justification, the Elfian said that they really had a good reason to want those mushrooms. She confessed that when she thought that she could not collect so many mushrooms as she wanted, her consciousness allegedly left her, and instead the body began to act without control. After these words, Adelne once again apologized to Sierra. The angel was strictly intended to warn the elves so that she could not even approach her mushrooms, but did not have time to treat. Kaito managed to stop Sierra to solve everything peacefully. He assured that he understood the motives of the elves, and asked to tell what made them act like this. Adelne hesitated with the answer. However, seeing Sierra in February, the elf confessed that these mushrooms were actually needed for her father. Adelna said that her father has long been chained to bed, and the smell of death is getting stronger every day. Even the best doctors of the elven country were powerless. The elf wondered if people heard about an amazing healing plant that grows on their lands. She said that she had just learned about him, left her hometown immediately, and went in search of him. All she wanted was to help her father, and when she found herself on the human lands, the first to whom she met was the heroes. Adela burst as soon as she remembered her dad. Kaito remembered his father. He grabbed the mushroom basket with determination. He put it in front of the Elfian and said that she could pick them up. Lisa was angry, indignant in such words. Sierra could not understand why Quito did that way. Why did he decide on it? Lisa opposed this idea, explaining that they were dangerous only for some mushrooms. She also reminded Lord that the city was in need of Kyocures to overcome its difficulties. But the hero denied her and began his story about the elves. Quito said that elves are a special people with a long life, sophisticated elongated ears, and a neat appearance. On the one hand, they are very similar to humans, but some minor external features distinguish them between others. The Lord said that both races lived on one land. But over time, people began to envy the elves, and because of this, the elves were expelled from the human territories. The story of the hero struck the forest because she and Quito once survived the expulsion. With tears in the eyes of Adelaide explained that, knowing the story, you can easily understand why the girl does not trust the elves. Adelna believes that the whole situation has arisen because of the mistakes of ancestors, so the new generation should be the fact that it will unite two races and help to resolve the disputes between them. People took almost everything from elves, and even mushrooms are not the most serious problem. Quito smiled as if supporting the proposal of the elf. Adelne, with tears in the eyes and folded under her chin hands, thanked the hero. Suddenly, one of Adelne's girlfriends, while her friend tied her hand, was finally able to attract attention. To this day, she has not been able to stop Adelne and explain that the plant they seek, a drop of dew from the sky, is not at all a fungus. The words of the elf were caught by surprise. The wonder was written on everyone's faces. The elf with tears in her eyes began to apologize for failing to understand the situation in time. But her heart was thought that if she had not corrected the facts, it could all be even worse. Adela was indignant that she was not immediately reported, because then all this could be avoided. The Elfian began to justify, saying that Adelum had just seen a basket of mushrooms, as if she had lost herself immediately. She stopped hearing his comrades, did not give them a word, but only distributed orders one by one. The elf was already going to tell everything how suddenly the girl rushed forward at the last moment. Adela was in front of the mushroom basket, realizing that all this could be avoided. Lisa wondered what the dwarves thought, because these mushrooms were called Chiyotes, not dewdrops from the sky. Kaito also decided that it was the same plant, just in every country it has its name. Ulahordal proudly asked the Elfian if she knew how a drop of dew fell from heaven. The girl confessed that she really knew it only in words. She began to explain that first, a drop of dew from the sky is not a fungus, but a medicinal plant that has stems and leaves. The Elfian continued her story. The petals of this plant were round, the leaves were 5, pimple, the stem was rigid and straight, and shiny pollen floated around the flower. Suddenly the elf notices a flower in her hair, which immediately attracts her attention. It recognizes it by description. This is the flower compared with a drop of dew that fell from the sky. The elf happily exclaims that this is what they were looking for. The Elfian fades with fear, impressing her with an unexpected find. While working on the field with Kaito Lisa, she wondered why he gave all the tears of elves. The owner replied to this that from their story he realized the elves have difficulties with food, so he gave them a whole basket of mushrooms. Kaito confessed that the elves' country inspired him memories of the old Algard, which is why he decided to help them. The hero also noted that in the forest they collected enough seeds, from which many different plants could grow. Kaito recalled that it is thanks to Ununice that they can now easily grow almost any culture. Lisa denied that the problems with the lack of people and the attacks of the monsters had not disappeared. Suddenly, Kido interrupted her, shouting that the monster appeared. But the gentleman was wrong. It was not a monster, but an angry Sierra, which clamped in the teeth of logs. Kaito yelled and once again pleaded not to destroy the young sprouts. The hero calmed down a little and asked to wait for him to go. Lisa did not find words to say something about what happened, but Lisa again returned the conversation to the lack of labor. After all, they have already collected the seeds a lot, but to work with it almost anyone. Kido reassured Lisa dreamily. They say, this problem will be resolved soon. Soon they don't even have to wait for new chats to reach. The young man remembered the moment of farewell to the elves. Then he became aware of their difficulties with food. He gave them all the mushrooms collected, and the elves sincerely thanked him for their care. Then Adelma told Kaito that the elves have long been famous for their ability to keep promises. One of the inhabitants of Algard, the man was inattentive in Ununice, who at the same time served as a survey tower. He yawned with boredom, tired of the endless wake of the horizon. Suddenly, the guard noticed something strange that he was scared and surprised. A whole horde of elves were rapidly approaching the Algard. The elves said they promised to come, so they appeared. In the end, it turned out that Adalna brought to the human lands 100 elves who were ready to work persistently and tirelessly. Lord Elgord was happy to meet the elves who had just arrived. The bald guard was frightened because he decided that this army of elves made a war against people after Chiyote helped them. But Helmet reassured the man, assured that he was wrong. Helmet compared the appearance of elves with a famous story about the animal that a person helped, and the next day she came to thank her rescuer. However, the guard still felt fear. He did not believe that this visit of elves was just a thanks. The man was worried. Maybe the elves did not like Chiyote mushrooms, and they came to take revenge on people. The frightened guard went to his master for help. Kato assured the guard that there was nothing to be afraid. He had already talked to the elves, and they promised to help people with lack of labor if their tribe agrees. After these words, the men calmed down a little. In confirmation of his words, the Lord showed the inhabitants of Algard in the distance of his friend, elf Adelne. Even during the first farewell to the elves Cleo, he told them that there was not enough labor in his village, and because of this, Algard could not develop at full force. It was then that Chiyote thanked the elves, giving them mushrooms, in advance, if they once decide to help people. The hero shared with Adele his plan of mass production of food. Such an idea would allow the whole tribe to settle in Algard. Chiyote told this specifically so that, if necessary, elves can move and live with people. The Elfine understood Chiyote's idea and said that everything depends on her, hinting that for both peoples it could be best. Chiyote personally went out to meet the elves headed by Adelme. The hero asked his girlfriend how his father feels and in what state. Adelme glowed with happiness. She said that thanks to the support of people, everything was settled, and now her father is all right. Chiyote sympathetically encouraged her. Lord Algard confessed that he was very surprised by the appearance of elves. He had no idea that they would dare to move to the land of people. Satisfied, Adelaine reminded him that the elves always adhere to their oaths. She spoke not the last phrase in human, but Chiyote could still repeat it. Chiyote asked Elf if he said their phrase correctly, and in response he heard a passionate confirmation. The large number of elves who arrived in the city were greatly alarmed by Lord Algard. He decided that such mass migration would be a serious blow to the land of elves. At this point, Chiyote asked Adelne if it was harmful to their homeland, and whether it would be all right with her. The girl reassured the hero, explaining that thanks to the long life of the elves have many subjects. Among them were people who sought temporary protection on the land of elves, as well as those who were not satisfied with the conditions or power in their native lands. People were in no hurry to move to Algard, but for the elves themselves, such guests were a great joy. Chiyote mentioned with understanding that leaving his native lands is not easy, but the Elfria quickly noted that only those who really sought to live among people came with it. Also, those who were interested in Chiyote's personality came to Algard. The hero was surprised when the elves came to the village behind him. Adelna gladly said that Chiyote became a real saint among the elves, because he gave them food and healing plants for free to save their king's life. Lord was puzzled when he learned that the Elfias told her people a completely different story than what really happened. Delny's story only in some moments coincided with reality, and most of the events she visibly decorated. And suddenly Chiyote realized what special status his girlfriend had. To see his assumptions, Chiyote asked if he realized that Adelne's father was the king of the elves. The girl confidently confirmed her words. The Elfian, as if nothing had happened, was naively asking, did she not mention in her story that her father, an elf with a serious illness, in fact, a king? To avoid misunderstandings, Adelne added, yes, her father is the king of elves. At this point, Chiyote suddenly heard someone's difficult steps. It was the step of the Elven king, who together with his people stepped on the earth. Chiyote was amazed at the height of the king. His figure seemed even more grand than expected. Lord Agoda confessed mentally that he had heard about meeting with the king of elves in advance, but could not even imagine that he would start to feel a real fear of this guest. The grandeur of the status and size of the king frightened Chiyote. Adelna, meanwhile, presented the hero to her father. When Chiyote was still aware that King of the Elves himself was standing in front of him, Adela's father had already approached him and apologized for his unexpected appearance. The King of the Elves was called Samuel. He personally confirmed his high status. Chiyote began to compare himself and the guest in the social hierarchy, at the top of which the king stands. The hero, with great excitement, realized that the status of the guest much exceeds his own. Although he was a lord of these lands, he was frightened because his situation was higher than ordinary people, and there were 3 big steps to the king's level: the aristocracy, the prime minister, and the royal family. Chiyote kneeled before the king, greeting his majesty Samuel. However, a strict parental voice stopped him. The king calmly told the hero that because they belonged to different races, the usual hierarchy of social statuses here is quite different. He asked not to use it. Kairos became confused and asked why Elf made such a decision. The king suddenly sank to the ground with a deaf knock and prepared to speak. Such an unexpected behavior, the guest scared Cleo even more. Lord Algard was worried that he saw that the king was looking sick, and exclaimed in anxiety, asking what had happened to him. Samuel remained calm. He suggested that Chiyote sit side by side and talk as equal to equal. The king of the Elfic king appealed to the hero, recognizing him the highest status, and called Chiyote his savior. The owner felt awkward. Two noble persons sat opposite each other, and their people stood in silence, preparing for negotiations. The elves looked peaceful and full of hopes. People were puzzled no less than their lord. Only Lisa sincerely rejoiced in all the new impression. The angels seemed to be indifferent, but their very presence in the negotiations said that the events were in fact interested in them. Chiyote still could not calm down, worried about the king's condition. He again asked if everything was fine with the guest's body, but the king interrupted him. The king did not say the word, because first of all he wanted to thank him for the salvation. If it were not for Keto's goodness, the Elfa would hardly be able to cure. Samuel said that the most wonderful in his recovery was that after the many years he spent his bed, when his body was completely exhausted, one dose of medication returned to him, and he again became as he was in his best years. The king confessed that he was well aware of the first meeting of Chiyote with elves and remembers how his daughter was not very polite to people. Samuel appealed to accept apology on behalf of the king. The elf also said that in his people the faithfulness of the promise is of particular importance, and for the violation of the word is waiting for a harsh punishment, an ancient rite, the name of which he uttered in his native language. It was a ritual of ears cutting. Samuel felt relieved and thanked the customs of the elves for the fact that it was because of them that his daughter's carelessness was restrained. However, even this king was not enough. He passed his sword to her husband and announced that he was ready to accept punishment instead of his daughter, for her intolerance to the rescuer of the kingdom. The king appealed to Chiyote with a request to perform the rite and take away the shame from the Elven. Samuel was extremely determined. He stated that he should definitely atone for his daughter, and if this is not enough to clear his name, he, as a real king, is ready to even sacrifice life just to remove the shame from Adelne. For the Elfski, it was a real surprise. She didn't even know her father's decision. Frightened, Adela turned to him, looking for answers. However, the king remained unwavering, and then the Elven was hopeful to Chiyote, hoping that he would intervene and help to convince her father. But Samuel stopped his daughter, warning that she did not get into other things, because she once made mistakes, and now, like a king and father, he should fix it. His decision was not discussed and was final. The upset Elfica last turned to her father, full of hope and despair, with a sincere request. Chiyote looked confused. He seemed to understand what the king was waiting for him, but he had not left some doubts. He still tried to understand what was happening around. Lord thought that his conflict with Adelne was actually resolved during their first meeting and thanks to the first oath. The elves then showed an unbearable, people forgave them, and the reached peace was affixed with a common oath. Samuel's intervention only continued the conflict. The elves perceived the forgiveness of people not as a sincere reconciliation, but as a call to fulfill the duty to those who forgive them. Chiyote realized that the king of the Elfic king was checking it. He decided that Samuel wanted to make sure that his intentions of salvation, and also to make sure that his people will retain independence, even being on the lands of people. Chiyote suspected that the king was afraid that people would not use the debt of the elves in favor. Meanwhile, Samuel reflected whether this man really considers him a depressed and foolish king who does not appreciate his life saved. Elf mentally turned to Chiyote, thinking whether he would take care of him so carefully if he had learned the true reason why Elf had been chained to bed for so many years. From now on, the elves were related to the covenant who came from Samuel's life. The king decided that with his death this union would surely break. The king of the elves approached Kiru to find out if the owner of his proposal accepted. The hero carefully assessed the situation, because he was offered to kill the king of a friendly country. However, Chiyote firmly replied he saved Elf not to take his life on his own. Samuel remained dissatisfied with the response of the man, so he addressed Chiyote. If he refuses, the debt will only grow and spread to his entire people. Then the Lord will take the life of every elf. Chiyote tensed. He understood that the king did not leave him any opportunity to refuse to collect the elven debt. The young man thought feverishly. He already guessed that Samuel came to people with a clear intention to die. Only Chiyote could not understand why he needed to deprive the life of the one who had just saved. After all, he did it, because otherwise it was impossible. The hero did not realize why he could not be limited to simple gratitude. Chiyote was nervous, because everything was out of his plan. The Lord realized that the only way out was to offer another victim, the equivalent price of the king's life. The hero realized that he should find a solution that Samuel would satisfy. Lord has gone over the opinion of many variants of events. He thought hard how to get out of this difficult situation. Kaito took advantage of his awakened skill to make the right decision. The glow of the label seemed to reflect the consciousness of a person who only recently awakened. Samuel persistently demanded the answer. Kaito made the final decision. Of the two options, he chose the one in which only one life will be taken away. The king of the Elfic king approved the choice of Lord, noting that he took a long time to reach such a decision. Adela could not believe that everything that happens right now in her eyes is really a reality. She cried and tried at least to resist somehow, but no effort was made. However, Kaito decided to make his adjustments to the dead. He immediately noted that the life of the king is not suitable as a fee. After all, if it is used to repay the debt of the elves, then the hero himself will remain guilty. After that, Lord was asked to offer another option. Kaito asked the king to ask that the debt could be extinguished not with money, but by his own wisdom. The elf again asked if he realized that the debt could be extinguished with wisdom, and this time he received an affirmative answer. Kaito explained that the elves live much longer, and therefore have much more wisdom. They are well known for stories, different technologies, and many other fields. The hero confessed that he seeks to take this knowledge, and Samuel would help him in this. Ununice, who, together with Sura, watched everything that was happening, with delight noticed how Kaito was trying to leave the Elven king alive and squeeze as much benefit as possible. This approach was clearly like her, but Ununice added that she did not approve of the choice of the Lord. Kaito sat, holding his breath, and with hope mixed with anger watched the angel, only he would not hold a scandal now. Still with tears in her eyes, Adelaide suddenly realized that from now on, no one will no longer be able to encroach on her father's life. Kaito confirmed the words of the elf. After all, to take advantage of elves, King Grant must be alive. Suddenly, Samuel laughed loudly. The elf praised that Lord's intention is really noteworthy, but the words of the king frightened their daughter, and Kaito remained embarrassed again. The hero could not understand what the elf leads. The king was amazed at this young man. He called him insurmountable, because in his long, elven memory, he always considered people terrible. But even among them, he remembered, sometimes real pearls, such as Chiyote, happen. Hearing these words, Samuel sharply thwarted one of his earrings from his ear. The hero still did not understand what was happening, and the actions of the elves scared him so much that he froze silently in horror. The king stretched out Kaito's torn earring. When the elf passed the earring to the man, he noted that during the rite of ears cutting, it was also necessary to disrupt earrings. The king replied that the times have changed for a long time, and now no one cuts his ears. Therefore, for young people, a ritual with a rush of earrings is a kind of new version of the ancient tradition. But Samuel noted that since Kaito has no earrings, he will have to cut off the whole ear. The Lord was terrified of this thought, but this joke was the trick of the king of the elves himself. He laughed loudly when he put the decoration on Kito's palm. The man has not yet fully understood what was happening and remained a little confused. Samuel also noted that such a ritual is an internal agreement that concerns exclusively elves. When both parties finally found common ground and peace, the characters treated each other with respect and friendliness. The king solemnly promised that any elf would fulfill any request of Kaito if it may not be difficult. The oath that was given was fastened by the king's name. The events moved to the hometown of Kaito. The younger brother of Elagora is confidently walking to the gorgeous house of the aristocratic family. A satisfied smile plays on his face when he boldly goes inside. After many years, Cleo's wandering finally returned home. He confidently steps towards his father, solemnly lifting his hands up. The father congratulated his youngest son without even getting rid of his work. Cleo told that he would just hurry to return home to share all his achievements with his father. Alfonso Fellbach was ready to listen to his son. He turned to Cleo, asking her not to disappoint his father, because he did not want her to repeat the mistakes of his brother Kaito. Alfonso showed his son in detail on the map that the earth entrusted the land by the emperor. Cleo became the heir to the territory of Fellbach. Catus also got the Algard Lota terrain. At the same time, Alfonso kept a few designs in his head about Minsa. She retreated back, returned to the youngest son, and strictly asked if everything was going well on the lands that he managed for the last few dozen days. It was for this purpose that the father called Cleo. After the hearing of the report, Alfonso praised his son, noting that he was doing well with his responsibilities. The father also offered a new territory for Cleo. For Manga, where there is almost no rainy, the youngest is to need the ability of the youngest to make blessings and fertility to dried lands. Cleo has promised that the father would not recognize forming soon. Such a place will change under his leadership. Alfonso listened to his son's plans with hope and immediately called for the feast, instructed to take the letter much further than usual. The father fell into the plan and sent a messenger to Algard. He was tormented by curiosity, or still alive. However, he never voiced the name of his eldest son. Lord Algard woke up right in the middle of the street without his coat. He looked confused because he did not remember how he found himself on the ground. Kaito tried to remember yesterday and what exactly led to his current state. He remembered how he met Frederick's Elfia, who treated him with a drink. The young man felt embarrassment, and Samuel's earring, which he carried in his ear, only emphasized his alienation and mourning. Frederica reached him a glass of drink and promised, "It is only necessary to drink as a hangover will go, and Kato himself feels better." Then the hero remembered how they, together with Samuel and others, tasted the elven wine. Around the fountain, on the stairs, the cats were still dozing, still under the influence of wine. From the conversation with the elf, it became clear that yesterday many people had a good, excellent drink. Frederick and Irony noticed, looking at people that they simply could not stop on time. Kaito remembered how last night he had to use his awakened force to save several guys from their condition of the commotion. However, the young man noted that it was a wonderful pastime. After all, so much joy in his life was not yet available. Kaito confessed that he would sincerely want such a wonderful atmosphere to continue in the Algard. Lord confessed that he still could not believe. His village has changed, became advanced, filled with joyful holidays, the latest technologies and striking architecture. Development of Algard. The man noted that thanks to the elves, who were brought by Adeln, as well as the wisdom of her father, the inhabitants of Algard very quickly gained civilization. Helmet also noted that now their buildings have become stronger in terms of architecture. Streets and clothing look much more beautiful, and delicious cooked dishes are now inferior to imperial delicacies. In the end, the man said that there was no trace left of the dilapidated Algard. Adela noticed Lisa, who was lying on the sidewalk and tried to get rid of after fun last night, and hurried to help. Meanwhile, Samuel appeared near the boys, leading his daughter. The king laughing at Helmet because he was too faint yesterday. The man had to admit that the wine tub for everyone was too much, and now Helmet still looks good after that. Adilna tried to wake the forest, slightly shaken the girl, but she did not want to wake up stubbornly, so she had to allow a little more. Kaito, who carefully monitored the communication between the elves and people, noticed that due to their joint hard work, the relationship between the two races became much warmer. They announced that it was time to have breakfast, and even those who were still dormant woke up and hurried to prepare for the meal. Everyone noticed that even ordinary morning meals turned into a real holiday here, demonstrating a high standard of living in the Algorod. Sierra ate her food with pleasure. Everything seemed delicious to her. Kaita recalls how he moved to this land and did not even imagine that such delicious dishes were waiting for him. Lord has already been about to bite a piece of his sandwich, as suddenly breakfast mysteriously disappeared in front of him. Kairosen, who took Ununice. The hero sought to find out why she did it, but never learned the truth. Unseis interrupted him, pointing his finger sideways to draw the young man's attention to something else. She pointed to the angel, man and elf. Junice noted that in the whole kingdom, not to find another place where so different races could sit together in such a calm atmosphere as now in Algard. For Junice, it was the first time that she saw Elfa with her own eyes. She used to know only people. However, even at this moment, the creation angel could not refrain from self-esteem, claiming that all these races were blinded by her divine holiness when they first met her. Eunice continued to be fond of herself, considering her personality better than elves and people. She said that to see her terrifying beauty and grandeur in her own eyes is true happiness, so both elves and people can consider themselves truly lucky. Kaitoa cheered the angel, recognizing that he and his people were truly lucky enough to have such support. Mary Junice rejoiced in his words and insisted that he praised her even more. The Lord thoughtfully noted that the fate was indeed favorable to him. Although Kaito was in exile from his home, he still managed to find a corner that came to his liking. He sincerely valued that the residents of Algarith worked for the sake of a common good. And for the hero, a real achievement was to make friends among another race. The young man promised to himself that he would certainly keep these new connections. Suddenly, someone began to clap. The Lord looked around. The sound sounded from his back. The stranger was sitting nearby as all the hero's friends. He was dressed like the rest, after a stormy night of celebration. The stranger began to talk about Kaito enthusiastically, praising him for a beautifully done business. When Gelmet first saw this man, he was genuinely surprised, and immediately asked who he was. The resident of Algard did not stop on one question. He was courteous to find out how long the guest appeared in their settlement, and why Helmet himself did not hear anything about it. A vigilant man already wondered if he was a stranger with a thief or robber, and began to threaten him openly. However, Kato stopped his friend, because he knew this man well. The young man noted that he sees this guest for the first time since the hero was sent to exile. This man was the right hand of his father Kato. He worked as a familiar courier for important things. The courier closed his eyes as if showing his consent. The ambassador confessed that yesterday he had the opportunity to stroll through the city and look carefully. He was delighted. He could not believe his own eyes that Kaito had renewed Ala grief. The man was convinced that the Alfanafelb would also be happy to such news. At this point, the young guy remembered his father. Kaito confessed that he first came to this province as the main lord to help his too busy father. And when he tried to manage this territory, he only began to respect his father, because it was extremely difficult to manage such a great land in Felbach. Lord quickly realized why his father sent his envoy here. Kaito thought that he did not justify his father's hopes, but after all, it was his father who organized it all himself. The hero came to the conclusion that in this state, the Algard will undoubtedly be useful for Felbach. The messenger of his father handed over the owner of the sealed letter. The letter was a written invitation for Kaito. His father called his son to his estate. After the messenger passed the message, he immediately went away. Kaito was asked if he was going to visit his father. After short thought, the hero replied that in the near future he really was about to visit Alfonso. Lord added that his father's messenger had already paid attention to the success of the young man, so the trip to the estate would be quite appropriate. Kaito also noted that Algard has already proved to be a good person, so the city is sure to receive help. The words of the Lord have entertained his loyal friends, who always fought for the well-being of Algard. The events are transferred to the fortified city, which is the capital. Walking through the streets of Felbach, Helmut wondered that he has been here for a long time. Instead, it was the first visit to a real human city for Adeln. Kaito told his friends that he was going to his father's house together with Sierra. The boys had to behave properly, and they liked this role. Elf asked Helmut if he was sure that everything would be fine. At first, the man did not even understand what it was about. Adelna confessed that she began to worry, but Helmo tried to reassure her. He explained that they would not have to leave the city, and also assured they will not be accepted for robbers because they look good and dress decently. Telma noted that she looked like a daughter of a noble kind. Such a compliment was embarrassed by the Elfian. Lisa laughed at the words of her husband, and Helmut again began to tell me enthusiastically what beautiful things were sewed for them. Adela was not angry because of her appearance, but for a completely different reason. She confessed that she was worried about something else. Suddenly, Lisa shared her experiences. She suggested that Kato would soon cease to be Lord. Helmut thought about it. He acknowledged that Kato was able to bring the dead Algoride back to life, and even in such a wonderful condition, and even in such a short time. This undoubtedly testified to a great talent that was difficult not to notice. But the man calmly noted that he once received an increase for his achievements and was sent to Algoret. Lisa burst into tears, but she imagined that the Lord would never return to their home again. However, she quickly calmed down, laughed fun, and said that the most important thing is Kito's happiness, and everyone else just needs to do her business. The duty of Kaito was to revive the destroyed land. Helmut liked Lisa's words, but Adelma was silent, plunging into her own anxieties. The girl was afraid that the residents of the capital would learn about her true essence, that she really was an elf. She was depressed that she could not share her experiences with her friends, and even more, they didn't even think about it. Kaito stands in front of his father. The young man politely welcomes him and notes that it has passed a lot of time from their last meeting. Without waiting for an answer from Alfonso, Lord Algard turned to his younger brother with the same welcoming statement. Cleo, with sarcasm, noted that her brother finally found a girlfriend. The younger sister laughed at the eldest, pointing to his broken heart, and caught on the fact that he dared to take such a step in a relationship. Sierra engulfed anger, but Kato just took the joke of his brother calmly without even trying to justify himself. Alphonse said he had already read the report of his deputy. Felbach confessed that he did not at first believe that all this concerned Algard. Kaito, with tension, was waiting for what decision his father would make. Alfonso approved his eldest son, confidently saying that everything was done well. Cleo did not expect such an assessment. A whole storm of emotions appeared on his face with surprise and annoyance, especially while Kito was glowing with happiness, because he finally fulfilled his mission. The father rose from his table and went to his eldest son. Alphonse acknowledged that he called the skill, and Ket in vain. He hurried with these words and now picks them back. But Felbach noted that these events made the young man get out of the usual comfort zone and made him a better person. Alfonso put his hand on his son's shoulder and proudly said that Kaito was very useful, and that he was proud of him above all. The hero could not believe his father's words. Sierra supported the second with a warm smile. Cleo was confused and did not understand what was happening, so she persistently demanded explanations. Alfonso and Cato could not understand what so upset the younger. Cleo took the hands of Algard. He could not agree with the idea that the ability of his older brother could benefit from the development of these lands. Cleo took the reports to make sure that all the achievements recorded there were sure to be credited to Ketsuo's account. But Lord Algota himself acknowledged that there were some inaccuracies in the report. Therefore, Philbach decided to understand and find the true truth. El Conso undertook to view documents and record all achievements, water routes, upgraded homes, fertile fields, and growth of the inhabitants. My father said that his deputy saw all these strange red changes. The messenger would never lie in his report. Alfonso also added that his Ganettes argued Algard was born again. But such an explanation of Cleo did not suit. Then Kaido stood to his younger brother, admitting that in his words it makes sense. In fact, it would be impossible to restore Algard on your own. The eldest son said that thanks to the awakened ability, he was able to easily find common ground with different people. Kaito also noted that he achieved his success in Algard, thanks to the support of those with whom he managed to make a connection. And it is to these people that he should thank for the revival of the city. Then Alfonso, pointing to the map of Felbach, said he was ready to entrust Quito management to another new landholding. This news stunned Lord Algard and Sierra. They did not expect everything to turn that way. The father began to explain that he could not ignore such a talented person who was able to revive the abandoned lands. Officially, the Felbach abolished Kato exile and greeted him on his return home. Sierra grabbed her girlfriend by her hand, full of hope. The guy, meanwhile, tried to understand or at least predict what could happen to Algard. He did not like the idea that he would have to leave these places. But Kathos did not affect Alfonso, because judging by the reports, everything should be fine with the city. Even when Lord Algard was in the capital, the city continued to develop. So it almost did not depend on others. Kato did not interfere with his father's words, because he made a lot of efforts to make the city independent. Philbach continued to convey his opinion to his son. He asked if he was aware that Elgor no longer needed his help, but his father's words became a real blow to Quito. The young man felt it as if he was again expelled from his home. Loneliness rolled up with a wave, but Sierra, who held it firmly by the hand all this time, reminded he was not alone. The angel squeezed Kita for his wrist, and from this pain Quito did not rest on his feet. He kneel. The actions of Sierra scared both Cleo and her father. Angela released her hand and looked at Kaido, who did not understand why she was doing it. Sierra remembered the hero how during their first meeting he suggested that she move and settle with the inhabitants of Algard. Angel's reminder reassured Kaido. He relaxed a little and acknowledged that Sierra was right. Kaido apologized to her because he had to say that it was time to go home. After the handshake with the angel, the hero's hand became ill, but the tears that acted in his eyes were sincere tenderness. Kaido apologized to his relatives and explained that now his real home was Algard. The words of the hero caused indignation in Cleo and Alfonso. The father was angry even more and again asked how seriously his eldest son was set up. Kaido calmly replied that yes. Cleo stopped understanding his older brother. He asked Kaito if he really wanted to stay in the Algort after everything that his father did for them. Cleo recalled that they can now be considered criminals. The hero replied that he is an important person for the city, but the younger brother shouted at Quito, reminding that he belongs to the Felbach family, and therefore should obey Mr. Felbach. Cleo asked his brother whether he really thinks that he would forgive him such selfishness, and the guy only sighed hard, getting ready to answer. The hero replied to all the accusations. His own family was the first to drive him out of his house as if he were a stranger for them. So Kaito chose Elgora with his new shelter. Over time, this city became home to other exiles, the same as he himself. People whom the young man will never leave or betray. Kato stated that he would always remain the owner of the Algorod. He apologized that he could not stay longer, because he was already waiting for the locals, and hurried to go, taking with him a Sierra. She, using the moment, has time to mock the offended aristocrats. But Alfonso remained calm. He saw well that while they did not meet, Kaido grew significantly. If the eldest son decided to continue to be a master, then no one will interfere with him. However, Cleo could not put up with his brother's decision. He was overwhelmed by anger and insult. The younger brother saw in Kaita only selfishness when he left. His heart was filled with hatred of his brother, and he decided to study him himself. Lord Algord kept complete peace. He saw the desire for great, not selfishness. For him, the best corner of the empire was a revived city, and Kaito dreamed that one day he would make the Algard Earth the best in the world. Kido and Sierra finally came to meet the friends who were already waiting for them. The boys happily rushed towards each other and hugged.